20 minutes after 4 o'clock, Basetsana Kumalo is in the building. Her memoir is called My Journey of Hope. Go out and get it. That's if you can find it. Because I went looking and I can't find it.
Oh, are you serious?
I'm so serious. I went to 2 different malls, went looking, but now I understand why. Do you want to share with everyone?
Well, our first print run was 13,000 copies. And by the 4th week, since we had launched it, my publisher Penguin called to say that we need to go for a second print run.
Wow.
And it's just been so overwhelming, Tando, how South Africans have received my story, my memoir, my truth,
Well,
my
it's
voice.
a beautiful story.
Thank you so much. It's a very honest account, candid account of my life. When I wrote it, I was only going to bare my true soul. The book is very vulnerable. I go to places, dark places of my life that I necessarily didn't want to revisit. But then I realized that it was important for me to revisit that so that I could be able to process and find my place of healing. And writing My Journey of Hope has truly been cathartic. I can say to you without a shadow of a doubt, I walk unburdened.
Wow.
I've owned my voice.
Wow.
And there's power in owning your voice and owning your story and telling our own stories.
I think you have to be so brave to be able to bare your soul, to be able to read back to yourself your own voice. And what I loved most about it is that the whole book is written really on the backdrop of apartheid essay. And there's a part in which you won Miss South Africa, and it's at a time where, there was one before you, but it's at a time where you were now living in an era that you weren't born in.
And it was understanding the hour of my winning in 1994 and the responsibility of the crown. I had to represent what a black girl child can achieve. The reign is only 12 months. What was critical for me was what I was going to do with my life post the reign.
Was that burdensome just during the reign?
It was daunting. I was a 20-year-old that lived a sheltered life. I came fresh out of uni. I was doing my 3rd year of study at the University of Venda, studying towards a teacher's degree. And so here you are thrust into the limelight. It's 1994. South Africa is on the world stage. It's a new dispensation. It's a new government. It's Madiba's Rainbow People.
Yes.
And so to have to play a significant role as an ambassador of a new nation was quite daunting. But then I soon realized that I need to get over the being overwhelmed and get on with the business of reigning and rewriting what pageantry and what Miss South Africa is all about.
And then you get a call from Nelson Mandela as Miss South Africa to say, hello, congratulations.
Listen, so Zelda Lagrange, who was Dada's assistant, and she gives me this ring and I pick up the call and she says, the president would like to speak to you.
I die.
And I think, okay, it's not April because I won in September, so this could not be April Fool's Day. And I do take the call. And on the other side of the line is Madiba's voice. And he says, congratulations, our queen. We are very proud of you as South Africa. And we will support you as this government for winning this title, because you are representing a generation of young people who are looking up to you, and much is expected of you. And I hope that I did live up to that expectation.
Wow. And the year before that, Jackie Mufokeng had been then the first black Miss South Africa.
Because in pre-1992,
you weren't allowed.
Black people were not allowed to enter Miss South Africa. And so Jackie wins in 1993. And I paid tribute to Jackie in my memoir because she truly paved the way for many of us. And when she won, the vitriol that she was subjected to by media, white media.
Apparently they said, this is not our queen.
This is not our queen. This is not who Miss South Africa looks like. And there was lots of insults that were hurled at her. But she was brave, and she stood and she wore that crown with such dignity and grace throughout her reign. And so when I won in 1994, I think South Africans had begun to wrap their heads around what beauty is, because the ideals of beauty have always been misconstrued pre our democracy. When you were of fairer skin, you were considered considered to be beautiful.
was-
But even this day, sorry, my angel,
Yes.
even to this day, there's still the issue of colorism. That when you're pretty and
you're
you're fair-skinned,
light-skinned.
you're considered to be beautiful.
Yeah.
And so I think, kudos to Jackie for rewriting that narrative about black beauty. And look at where we are this year.
I mean, look at
2020.
Zosibini Tunzi,
That's
who's now
exactly
Miss Universe.
where I was going. I mean, how awesome is that?
That's incredible. But you ought to give yourself a little bit more credit as well, because you track back to not being allowed to be a finalist for Miss Soweto because the other contestants are saying you're too fair-skinned, you actually look like a colored person, and then you have to do a pencil test.
Listen, and the organizers of Miss Soweto actually had to go to my parents' home, Soweto, to actually see that my parents were actually black, because there was a riot with the contestants to say that no, she can't enter Miss Soweto. She's colored. She's fair-skinned. She has a unfair advantage, and so that pencil test was quite disconcerting. Here are these strangers. I mean, to come to my home and to speak to my parents
Imagine.
in isiZulu nesisuthu
To check.
ukuthi they can truly speak the language.
When I read that story, literally I had to pick my jaw up from the floor.
That's our history. That's where we come from. But we've come so far.
But we still have so far to go.
Of course.
Because, what it made me realize is that apartheid is, we treat it on such a shallow level, but it's so
superficial.
deeply entrenched, in who we
rooted.
are
Yeah.
and rooted. Because for small things, like, colorism is something that's still very much alive, and it goes back to them letting us know who's better than who.
Yeah. And you think about that. I mean, the apartheid system had really tried to indoctrinate us, even our psychology, between ourselves as black people, and divide us amongst ourselves.
Yeah. Next, we dive into the media mogul and how that came about. And you look at your journey, and did you imagine that you'd be here? But wait, I can actually answer that. I remember there's a part, I wrote it down, but your dad, there it is, I found it. Your dad said you were worthy and you were beautiful and you were talented and you could do anything you put your mind to.
Living Kogamakhalimele and with my dad and my mom, my dad particularly, it was like living with your own motivational speaker.
Wow.
Papa every morning would affirm us, and henceforth, we never had to seek validation, my sisters and I, even my younger brother from the outside world. And so, did I know when I was a child in the household how my life would change, or the trajectory of my life would change? No, but I knew that I was destined for greatness. I knew that there is so much that life has to offer because, at the age of 13, my father gave me my first book, The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. And so I grew up understanding how your thoughts create your reality.
Yes.
And I'm a believer. And so I knew that if I believed and I prayed, God does answer prayer.
What's profound, though, is you had no footsteps before you to show you the path that you've now created, which is just amazing. The next bit I'd like to touch on is your journey of entrepreneurship. I mean, that started off with, mom is a teacher, dad is a bus driver. So to bring extra income, we sell some sandwiches at Orlando Stadium while Mapagania and Kaizer Chiefs are,
My entrepreneurial journey started in my mother's kitchen.
Yeah.
My siblings and I used to make an assembly line, making these sandwiches. My mom would butter the bread. Auslerato, my eldest sister, would put in a filling. Baba would cut the bread. Me and my brother would cling wrap. All of us had chores.
Yeah.
And we used to sell those sandwiches, at a derby, Orlando Stadium, when Chiefs and Pirates were playing. My parents would post us at different
So you're getting money from different angles.
Listen, supplementing the family income
Your
was
dad was very
a
smart.
collective effort. And,
Yeah.
my mother then was the first black woman to learn bricklaying. And from that...
You'd extend houses.
Yes, and they started a construction company. There's just so much that my parents did. I remember at the end of the month, Mama used to make these curtains. In the middle of the night, she'd sit on her singer machine and just make these curtains. And then month end, and Ali Papa would go to Kwakwa to sell these curtains. There's so many things that I can think about that my parents were just so enterprising. They made sure we always, had a roof over our heads, clothes on our back, food on the table, shoes on our feet, and so for me, it runs in my DNA being an entrepreneur. I've always been self-employed. I've never, since I was age of 20, worked for anybody but myself. I've had some spectacular failures in business, but I have never allowed that to deter me. I've taken those as life lessons, paying my school fees, because I'll never repeat the same mistakes again.
Also, how will you rise if you don't fall?
Indeed. Dust yourself up and keep on moving.
Yeah. How do you think your mom and dad would have felt about this book?
I think, when I finished writing it, I said a prayer, and I could visualize them smiling from heaven.
Yeah. Your story of your mom's passing had me absolutely gutted. However, there was a part of me that felt like everything happens as it should and when it should. Without giving away too much of the book, are you willing to share that with us today?
Yeah, well, it is in the book.
Yeah.
My mother's passing was untimely. My mom, one of her dreams was to go to the State of the Nation address, the opening of Parliament, and my sister and I, Johanna, managed to make that happen in 2006. And sadly, she then had a heart attack, and she had to have a triple valve replacement operation. My mother's cardiologist was the famous Wouter Basetsana, who, as we all know, had a mission to annihilate us as black people. And so to have Wouter operating on my mom, if you ask me how we all felt sitting outside the hospital operating theatre, I cannot begin to tell you.
I can't begin to imagine.
We prayed, we cried, and the reality is that he gave my mom a chance to live. And my mother's life was taken by an intern, a locum, who, when Mama went, her driver took her to the hospital for her nibs. And decided that, my mom was very, very much a woman of minimal means. And I got a overall and her flip-flops. And this doctor said, my mama told him what she needed and said, no, but I'm the doctor.
Also, she's had this condition for many years.
And she knew exactly what, she required.
Yeah.
And this locum decided, no, I'm the doctor. I will drip you and I'll give you the medication that I think you need. And she even made it very clear to this young man that I've just had a triple valve replacement op. So the medication that I'm on is not one, that needs to be tampered with. And long story short, she was dripped up and given this medication that basically, long story short, perforated her heart, and she didn't make it. And she called my sister Johanna and she said to her, listen, baby girl, I'm not going to make it. This is what happened. Paul, who was her driver, brought me in, and they gave me medication, and I'm battling to breathe, and I don't think I'm going to make it. And so, and she asked that please take me back to Wouter Basetsana to help me, and they wouldn't move her from the hospital. And Patience, my partner, I was in Joburg that particular day. Patience,
so she rushed. She's in Cape Town.
She's in Cape Town. She rushed to the hospital. She picked up such a fuss that if we don't put Mrs. Makhalimele in this ambulance, and there were ambulances, and she kept on begging to say, you need to move me. She called Johanna. She called me, says, you need to move me fast because I'm not going to make it. And by the time Patience arrived, she had had her first heart attack. And then when they put her in the ambulance, she had a second heart attack. And by the time she got to the heart hospital, she literally, patient tells me that she was still conscious. And I said, please put the phone on her ear so I can speak to her. And I could hear there was pandemonium, Doctors, you could just hear that it was chaos. And Patience put Muter on the phone, and I told her, I love you and thank you for everything you've done for us. And then I could hear Patience being shut, being pushed out of...
I'm sorry.
And she said, Basi, she nodded. She heard you. So and it was just a month before we could bring back home. You know, her society, her friends were waiting for her comeback, and we had planned a big, you know,
I think a lot of the time
for her when she arrived back home, and she never made it back home.
A lot of the time when we lose loved ones, it's never in a perfect way. It's never in a perfect timing, and I can't imagine how much anger your family must have felt through that entire ordeal. But there's so much strength in you letting it go and not even fighting that.
We wanted to, my siblings, we discussed it at great length, because, you know, her file started, you know, went missing.
Yeah.
The very locum, because Mama explained that he's slight in frame, he's wearing specs, he's tall, he's thin. They made him disappear, because we even asked the cleaners at the hospital that, was there a locum like that? Yeah, no, he was here, but he's, you know, they've moved him. And we thought, you know, what good is that going to do? It's not going to bring her back to sue the hospital. We'll be in the courts forever. And we asked ourselves, what would Mutter want? She would just want us to find our peace, and let her rest in peace. And so then we said, you know, we won't take the matter further.
Thank you for being honest today. Thank you for being honest in the book. Thank you for being a beacon of light, a beacon of strength. Thank you for setting steps that we never knew existed. We thank God for you. I thank God for you.
Thank you so much, Thando. Thank you.
5FM. Watch 5FM TV on YouTube. 5FM.